Hello and welcome to another episode of The Associates. I'm David Aquino and this is Jean-Michel. So, what do we got going on this week, Jean-Michel, in the real estate world,
I don't think much,
politics?
honestly. It's just been kind of like a limbo. I mean, did you notice bond yields are up this week?
Yeah,
They
they're up about 65 basis points
yeah. So
since
we're seeing
January.
the fixed rates going back up as well. People were expecting it to keep going down. We got inflation news in US came out. It came out higher than expected. I mean, still lower than what it was the month before, but higher than what they were expecting. It was 2.9 they were expecting. It came back in at 3.1. We have our numbers coming out next week, right, for
Hmm.
Canada.
I think next Wednesday
And then
or
Bell
Tuesday.
had a huge layoff, right? Almost 5,000 employees. And looks like the government wants to talk to them. Just wonder what they're going to tell them.
Yeah, no, they apparently the CEO of Bell, along with a bunch of other executives, have been called to testify. So,
I mean,
you know,
the government needs to testify themselves. I mean, all this corruption in our country is just awful.
I don't understand why they're not calling for like demanding an election between Jagmeet Singh, between Pierre Poilievre. I mean, it seems like Jagmeet Singh has in recent weeks he's kind of not broken away, but he seems to be dissenting a little bit more
Well,
from
don't get me wrong.
that
I
coalition.
would distance myself as much as possible with Trudeau if I could,
Sure.
if I was him too. You know what I mean? Like
Which
he's tanking in the numbers, right? It's just insane.
the whole reason the liberals have had the power to make to bring these laws into action is because of the coalition that they've had with the NDP. And
Right.
now with an election on the horizon, it feels like the NDP aren't stupid. They see the poll numbers too.
Yeah.
I think Trudeau's disapproval rating is somewhere in the 60 plus, 65+% range right now. So I don't know. We don't have another election scheduled until October of 2025.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I feel like lately what you're noticing with people, I just feel like the government and everything is just kind of, instead of trying to bring people together, it's kind of separate. They're just trying to separate and like class them in different groups of people. And it's just like, I just feel like there's more hate in our world than ever before. I don't know if you've ever feel that, but it's just been insane with
There's
everything
a
going
there's a
on
lot
now.
going on.
Yeah.
So one of the ministers came out this week and said that there was no more federal funding for Canadian roads. Do you hear about that?
No, I didn't hear
No
about
more
that.
funding for Canadian roads. We have 10 plus billion to send to the Ukraine to
Yeah.
fight a war that's been going on for 2 years that neither side wants to settle.
Yeah.
And we have homeless encampments all across the city and all over, popping up all over Canada. What are we doing? What do we do? I know we come on this podcast once a week and we complain a lot, but I think you also have to just call things as you see them, right?
Yeah.
Like that's your job as a citizen, in my opinion, is to pay attention to the news, interpret it, and then come to your own conclusions. But it seems like everything's bad at this point in terms of our policy decisions.
Yeah.
The highest immigration in 70 plus years, in the midst of a cost of living crisis,
And a
in the
housing
midst
crisis.
in
There's
the midst of a
not enough homes, right?
in the
Like,
midst of a housing crisis.
yeah.
What what are we doing? What are we doing here in Canada, Jean
Everything's
Michel?
kind of just going all over the place. I don't know, man. It's just tough. I mean, like even work wise, it's like I just feel like everyone's kind of all over the place. It's just insane. Like the market's hot, cold. Everyone doesn't like no one people want to buy, and then some news comes out, they change their mind. It's just kind of like, yeah, I don't know. It's really tough. There's a lot of like, I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't want to be negative because obviously it's not fun to be in
Be
that negative
authentic.
space all the
Be
time, but
authentic. Say what you feel. I mean,
you
no,
know,
you should. What are you worried about?
no, I don't
You
know.
know,
I mean, you're right. No one's watching this anyway, so it's
it's
whatever. Our
not about
opinions are
that.
opinions.
It's not
But
about that.
I don't know. I just feel like we're sending all this money outside our country when we have a lot more problems here, right? It's just I don't know. I just wish we instead of us trying to divide us, they should try and unite us. And it's just been insane. You have that Ukraine, like you said, 2 years. It's crazy. I didn't even think about it. It's been 2 years. You're right.
Been hundreds of thousands of people that have died in that war.
For
You
nothing.
know,
What did they gain?
we're not
Nothing.
all like we're not historians here. Okay,
Yeah.
there's a long history between the Ukraine and the Soviet Union, and they separated. And the bottom line is that we can't we pick and choose what wars that we fund. And when we have problems here at home, I mean, how can we fix these problems over, abroad,
I mean, people
right?
are having trouble buying groceries, and we're sending billions over to Ukraine. I understand they have their own issues and they have their own problems going on there. And don't get me wrong, I wouldn't want to be there. I wouldn't want to switch places. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like, and then, they send all this money and then you hear, oh, carbon tax is increasing. Oh, land property
Right.
taxes increasing.
Hmm.
Oh, our budget, we're negative. Oh, it's gonna, it's like, what's gonna happen? All we're gonna do is like, even our income tax, I think this year in 2024, like they're increased, like you pay more
Why
now.
not?
Yeah, it's just like
Why not?
tax, tax, tax. I'm like, like I was watching a video on Instagram. It says like you start off left, and then the more you start making money, you start earning, you start buying things, you start realizing how much time and work you put to get your money. You kind of start shifting to the right because it's like you realize what it is, right? So it's just like as in like a political sense. But I
I don't
mean,
like the idea of left and right, and
yeah.
that's not some sort of like grandstanding or me like that's genuinely how I feel. There's certain topics that I'm more liberal on, or,
Oh, for
more
sure. Yeah,
traditional
me too.
liberal, and then there's topics and there's issues that I would lean. I think we're in the society where you're either left or whether you're right. And I think a lot of people feel like if you're in this camp, then you have to move forward and support every decision from this camp. But that's just not how the world works, right? Like
For sure. Yeah.
we
I mean, I
we
think like we just need to be humane with people, like finding out that, there's a basement in Brampton that had over like 12 or 20 students in there. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there is one with 20 students, but it's just like because they can't afford rent or whatnot, and that landlord's just like, charging them some ridiculous amount to be there. And it's just, I don't know. I just think that's inhumane, right? It just doesn't make sense. It's just, I don't know. It's just everything seems just horrible. Like the more and more you look into it, like you can't dig too deep into this rabbit hole because or else then you're just like, what's this is just insane.
I don't think it's a rabbit hole. I think it's just a matter of paying attention to what's happening. And you look at the state of Canada here, and we have a state-funded media. That our current government has decided to provide billions of dollars to these media companies. And then the question is, are these media companies really going to report on them unbiasedly? And the answer logically is no, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if your job relies if your job is put in place, like all these cuts that they recently had at Bell, now these other organizations that are being funded by the Fed, not I hate when people say funded by the federal government, funded by us.
Right.
We're paying for that. Like nothing is government funded. Everything comes from tax revenues.
Yeah.
So if you tomorrow were a reporter at CTV News or CBC News, do you think that you or your managing team would be on board with you being very critical of the current government that's funding your job?
Probably not.
Well,
No.
not probably that. The answer is no.
Yeah.
So, again, Olivia Chow, 10% tax increase, John Tory, 5% tax increase the previous year. We're looking at 15% plus and maybe a lot more in property taxes. And to me, that just smells like like incompetent, careless politicians. Politicians come around once every 4 years to get your vote. And outside of that, they do not care about you. It's this political royalty, this political class that over the last 5, 6, 7 decades has emerged as we're going to set the laws, we're going to do whatever we want, we're going to raise taxes, we're going to vote to increase our salaries every single year, we're going to dole out $20+ million in bonuses to the Bank of Canada when they've driven us into this inflationary nightmare that doesn't seem to be going away. That's not transitory. What are we doing? What are we doing in this country?
I don't know, but let's switch our gears back to real estate.
Let's do it.
So we were saying sales are up by 37%, right? That's
Yep.
insane compared to last year where I honestly can tell the difference. Like last January, it was slow, so slow, it was insane. There was just listings piling up. Now it's like there's not as much, and it's just, people are out and shopping. I'm seeing like 2, 3 offers on multiple properties. But again, like then you see some weeks where it's like some properties, condos on the other hand, like are really slow. Like
They are, yeah.
it's crazy how you go from like freehold and then you're in condos. It's like condos, you can pretty much negotiate what you want. Freehold is like, hey, this is the diamond, this is what you want, this is gold.
Hmm.
Freehold, the condos is like silver, and
Why
even
do you
then,
think that is?
well, I guess you know what it is. I just find it funny because like if you want to live downtown, like getting a freehold is unrealistic for any first-time home buyer or anything, unless you're like a doctor or a dentist or something. It's unrealistic. But like a condos, I think living in a condo downtown is awesome. Like I would love to, like live in a condo and be downtown and be able to walk everywhere. If I didn't have to drive, I would definitely do that, right? But like when I guess when you're going in the suburbs, because they have all these like micro little downtowns, like you got Yonge and Shepherd, Yonge and Eglinton, you got like Scarborough Town Center. I mean, I guess those areas kind of like living in a condo when you're surrounded by houses and the houses aren't crazy. I guess it's more appealing to try and like push for that house. And then also maintenance fees have just skyrocketed lately. It's just insane. I just don't understand how you can justify $1,200 a month or $1,300 a month for a condo on a maintenance fee. That to me is like absurd.
Right. So I mean, I would say two things. I would say number one, half of the condo inventory across the GTA is owned by investors. Number one, we talked about that this morning in our meeting. If you own multiple properties and you come on hard times financially, which one are you more likely to sell? Are you going to sell your cottage, up on the water, or are you going to sell your primary residence?
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing when it comes to condos. Um, and I also just look at the amount of new inventory coming into the market is the bulk of it are high-rise condos in the city. So, we have more people chasing a more rare asset in a detached or a freehold property where they're not really making as many of them versus condos. But I think largely it's the investor population of these condo units that probably went variable. And, maybe they were losing $300 a month when they first bought it 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or whenever they bought it. And now they're looking at, $800, $1,000, $1,500 a month negative. And, people they can only continue on that path for so long, right?
No,
So,
fair enough. But I
a
mean, like,
lot of new condo inventory.
no, 100%. But I mean, like, there's also that news with Airbnb. Like, people are probably anticipating that Airbnb at some point will kind of be gone in some areas in Toronto and stuff like that. There are like rules all over the cities. Like some cities, they're banned in certain areas. If you're close to a hotel, like Monique was saying, like if you're close to a hotel in Montreal, you can't have an Airbnb. It's too,
Right.
which is crazy because you want competition. But I guess, here in Canada, they always want to favor the big guy instead of a little guy. But besides the point, um, I just think like people need to stop trying to get something. You have that first time buyer who's like, I want a detached house, 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom. I want to be in this area, which is like downtown. I want to be Little Italy and I want to pay 800,000. We both know that's impossible unless it's a tear down. Even there, that's like the land value alone is worth more than that. Like you'd probably be looking at a um what's it called? Like a garden suite or something
You can find some fixer uppers, but you're talking like, two
like real bad.
quarter million dollars plus.
Yeah.
It's definitely six figures
But I
to
mean
bring
like
something like that
condos.
into a livable.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of the condos I'm seeing on the market, like the bachelors that are under like 400 square feet, that I don't know I don't even know how that even got approved to get like built because it's just like, how could you even live in there?
The micro
Like
units. Yeah.
you can, yeah, you can see in the buildings when you're like walking into their smaller unit, you can see who they're catering to. Because like you're saying, investors, right? Like they're not buying this to live in it. They don't care what it is. They're just looking at it. Well, if I put a bed here, someone's going to rent it. And if a one bedroom's renting for 25, well, I'll rent this bachelor for 22, and someone's gonna rent it because they need a place to live. And they're probably gonna prefer to live in this tiny little closet instead
Sure.
of living in a basement, right?
Hmm.
So I mean, like it's just like these investor condos. I don't know how long that's gonna last. Like I think the builders are gonna have to start shifting their floor plans to more, like actual like young professionals being able to work and live in the house and like these things that are 390, 320. Like I've gone to a condo where it was like 290 square feet.
Small.
Dude, it's like the size of a closet. And you're just like, you can't even fit a bed in here. It's like, and it's like super narrow. It's like everything. I just don't understand how it got
Yeah.
approved. Like it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I see some, they have these two burner, they're like hot plates,
Yeah,
basically. They're
yeah.
so rather than a stove. So you have like the condo, if you're lucky, you'll have the condo size dishwasher, which is like half the size of like whatever, 36,
The condo
32 inch
size fridge, which is like I
condo
feel like
size
the
fridge,
size
and
of a
then you have
regular
like this
fridge.
this two burner hot plate, and
Yeah,
then literally just kind of like a bed there, right? So I
yeah.
think anything that went on sale after 2015, when the market really started to take off, and developers thought, hey, we can take 600 square feet, and rather than sell it as a one bedroom, we can sell two bachelors and get a better return. And the market was just there was an appetite for units like that at the time because it was just give me anything if I can
Yeah.
afford it with low interest rates. And even like I said, even if I'm paying in $300 a month or a couple $100 a month, people had the appetite to do that. Now, not so much.
No,
Not so much. You got a home equity line of credit, you got credit card bill. Like this is what the average Canadian's dealing with right now. So you start to look at where can I divest? Like where can I get out and you know reset, restructure, wait it out. Interest rates will come down. It's
Mhm.
just a matter of like everybody, I think, for the most part, everybody called the interest rate hike wrong. I don't think anybody was expecting 5% increase in interest rates over the course of, 18 some odd months, but here we are. When was the last interest rate increase? Was summer of last year?
Yeah, it
June,
was July.
June or July of last. So we're sitting now at, whatever that is, 8 months, 9 months of interest rates paused. And then the question is, when do they start coming down? By how much?
Yeah.
What's happening in the bond market? What's happening in the labor market? What's happening with immigration? Like there's so many different factors, which is why it's impossible to predict, like, what's going to happen and when it's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I remember like when, one bedrooms used to be like 600 square feet, and then they started to make them 500 square feet. And I was like, man, how are they going to do that? And you're like, walk into them, you're like, how could you live here? And then, you start getting used to that size. And
Sure.
now it's like 490 and then 450. Oh man, dude, it's just like, it just every year a new building comes up. It's like they're pushing the limits on how small, and even two bedrooms, 800 was like a good size. Now it's 700. Now it's 600. And then it's like I've seen two bedrooms at like 550 square feet. It's literally like two closets with a tiny like
Right.
kitchen. You can put like a tiny little love seat with like a tiny TV, and people are buying it. But it's just like, again, it's an investor point of view. I think they're just catering to investors. It's not, and I think they need to stop approving these condo floor plans and actually make it where it's possible for someone to live. At this point now, if they did that, those condos would be crazy price, because it's just like you got to look at price per square foot.
It's this constant balancing act, right? Because I don't think the city's ever going to come in and try to, the city's going to want to have more and more construction. Developers are going to want to get in and get out as quickly as they possibly can. They're going to want to list and sell properties that are most attractive, that they can move quickly and bring in the deposits, get the construction started, complete, and then move on to the next project.
Yeah.
A lot of investors got caught off guard. Like I told you, I had that. I went to go meet that small developer a few months ago. They have a project in southwestern Ontario, and they bought the land back in 2021. And the numbers just don't make sense anymore. Nobody wants to buy an $800,000 two-bedroom condo in this part of
In
southwest.
Niagara or Welland or whatever it was.
It's in the southwestern part towards the U.S. border.
Right.
So
Yeah.
where the market goes from here, we'll see. Uh, if it was me, I mean, it depends on where you're at, right? I mean, because if you're just starting out, if you're in your early 20s and you've saved some money and to go and buy a condo, that might be a great thing for you 5, 10 years from now. That might be an amazing thing for you. If you own a condo and you have some equity, and you want to upgrade to something in a I think freehold properties with land will be the most highly sought after pieces of real estate for residential real estate moving forward, because we've seen it now with Toronto allowing higher density and these laneway houses. And I think it's just a matter of time before these other cities and municipalities start to approve these types of zoning and in their bylaws. So when we talked about this maybe a month ago, and I was talking about that laneway suite, that project, those landlords that I'm representing, and you said, well, hey, that's only in Toronto, right? That would never happen in the suburbs. Why not? You
Yeah.
know,
No, it's true.
where does the policy decision go from here? Where you're going to have a house, like a neighborhood that was once, single family, residential,
I mean,
people.
as time goes by, you're just going to start seeing it expanding, because obviously it makes sense, because everyone's going to want to be as close as possible to the city. So as you're going further away, it's going to start coming. People are going to tear down these bungalows and houses and build up these triplexes, fourplexes, whatnot.
Mhm.
And they're going to keep going and keep going and keep going. And then at some point, you're going to be out in Kingston, and it's going to be on the 401. There's never going to be any greenery. It's all going to be cities all the way down the 401. It's going to be bumper all the way from Kingston all the way to Toronto. It's going to be a 50-hour drive to get from Kingston to Toronto, because you're literally going an inch every hour. But
So they predict that by 2050, the population of Ontario is going to double. So we're sitting at about 14 million people live in the province of Ontario as of today. So, we're looking at potentially having almost the current population of the entire country in the province of Ontario. Um,
I mean,
Look,
we're
nobody's
not a
against
big
him.
city. We're not a
Nobody,
big province.
nobody's against. What do you mean?
Like, I mean, like if we're comparing Ontario, like Ontario is huge landmass compared to like
Right.
California or whatnot, right? Like California, any place in the
Mm,
US, California's got like 44 million alone. You ever, you
right, right,
ever,
right, right.
You know what I mean? Like that's the population of Canada. Boom, in California. LA, you're landing, you're literally as you're landing in LA, you start hitting a point where you start seeing houses and you just see houses all the way to the airport for like 10, 15 minutes. You just got to imagine like that's what's going to turn into like Ontario because everyone's going to stay as close as possible. These all our cities are going to actually connect into like it's there's never going to be like where you're going to be on the highway, it's going to be trees and it's going to be like farmland, it's going to be literally houses and developments all the way along the 401. I mean, they I would add more highways if I were them, but I
Well,
just
no more roads. The
no
federal
more.
government said no more roads, no more
Oh right,
budget,
yeah, yeah, they blocked off. I'm sorry, you're right, I
no
forgot.
more. We don't have it in our budget. So look, no sane, rational person, in my opinion, is against immigration if it's done correctly.
Yeah.
You know, like my grandparents were immigrants, but they weren't born on the land. There's millions of other Canadians. They come from immigrants. But when we have record immigration, highest immigration in 70 plus years, you ask yourself, why? Why is this? All the loopholes when it comes to when it comes to international students. There's these colleges now that are like 99% are immigrant students or foreign students.
And
And
they're
then all the
fake
loop,
colleges, they're not real too, they just come there just like
Conestoga,
yeah.
Conestoga College is one of them. They're like the population is predominantly international students, and they charge because they get more money from them, and then you have all these exclusive rights. If you're an international student, you're not considered a foreign buyer. You saw HSBC. Did you see that? There's a woman who owns, I think, three homes, one in Aurora, one in Markham, and one somewhere else, and her mortgages are with HSBC, and she works as a part-time hairdresser here in Toronto.
Yeah.
And on her mortgage application, she put that she made like $500,000
Oh
in
yeah, yeah, yeah. They're getting caught with
like
all their fake mortgages. There's just so much mortgage fraud all over the place. But RBC
right.
is buying HSBC. No,
I
like
think so. Yeah, I think they
yeah,
already did.
RBC and that. I don't know how they're letting this happen. Like these banks are just buying up all these other banks. It's just it's gonna be another monopoly. It's gonna be
A lot of
RBC.
lot of controversy. Yeah, there was a
Yeah,
lot of controversy about that deal.
yeah.
And look, like
HSBC, I known was the most corrupted bank. There's a whole documentary on
the
Netflix about
Netflix one,
HSBC.
I saw
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
But again, nobody has all the right answers, and what's right for me and my family might not be right for somebody else in their family. So I get that, but as all our industries continue to be dominated by a few small market leaders, I mean, logically, you would look at that and say that's bad for the consumer. Groceries, telecom, all the major industries here in Canada are basically dominated by a few different players. So, like even having things like regional banks, like they have in the US, I mean, is that a
Local
better
banks, like
system?
people who just like have like a town bank. You only find this bank in that town or something like that.
Whatever, right? I mean, again, we're not experts on this, but we talk to people every single day. People that live and work in the city, they own real estate, they're moving around, they got their problems. Like we have a different perspective than a lot of other people, just in terms of what we do every single day. The stories that we hear, the situations we deal with, the different things that we see behind the scenes of people's lives. Um, and there's just there's a lot of negativity out there. There's a lot of um, I feel like a lot of Canadians have kind of just lost hope the last few years.
I believe that.
And where we go from here, you hope things can turn around. You hope that we don't see these massive layoffs, you know. But
Yeah.
I mean, otherwise, inflation print next week, that's going to be a precursor to what the Bank of Canada does next month. Next
Yeah.
month is the next
It's
BOC meeting,
March 6th, March 6th.
March 6th.
Yeah.
So there is a lot kind of, coming down the pipes in terms of what's happening today. Yes, January sales were up 37% in comparison to the worst January in 24 years and the 10th worst month ever recorded. So the stats can always be a little bit misleading.
For sure. Yeah. But you did forget one thing, David.
Like,
Like and
we
subscribe.
got to say like and subscribe, I think, earlier in the video.
I agree. I think we got to start over. Let's start over the video and like and subscribe.
Let's
Like
start
and
recording.
subscribe.
Yeah, but no, next week, guys, we'll have information on CPI print.
Yeah.
That'd be really interesting to see. We'll see what happens as we kind of head towards, the second half of February.
Yeah. And I guess
Otherwise,
everyone have a nice family day weekend and we'll
is
see you
that on Monday?
next week. Yes, Monday, long weekend.
Happy Family Day, everyone.
Yeah, sounds good.
Everyone have a great week. See you guys next week.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Like and
tuning in.
subscribe. Like and subscribe.